Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Today I'm going to talk about well-intentioned evil, and not just that it is, which I'll run over real quickly, but why well-intentioned evil is the worst evil of all, and occurs always at the societal level. So let's just back up. I've talked about this multiple times, how if you don't understand that evil at the societal level is well-intentioned, and you just think, well, my socio-political opposition, they're just evil, they're only out to gain power, or to gain money, or to kill or enslave people, and they're knowingly doing that, then you yourself are ripe for evil. Because that's not the way that evil works at the societal level. People have a tendency to think in just everyday criminality terms, where everyday criminals, the kind that the FBI chases, which are deeply smart, and they know that they're up to no good, they know that they're breaking the law, that's their business model, right? Jeffrey Dahmer knew he was doing evil, but he had a compulsion. He couldn't overwhelm it. Some people just make that decision. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I realize it's wrong, and I've sort of made that path in my life. Societal level evil doesn't happen that way. It can happen to you, and it can happen to me. And you will be blindsided if you believe that because you're well-intentioned, it could totally not happen to you. No. They're well-intentioned, and the reason that they're well-intentioned when they do evil at the societal level is because when you're part of a movement, those movements are filled with all of these social networks. And the social networks, over time, emerge or create in an emergent way, in the narrative, sophisticated ethical justifications for the dangerously evil stuff that they do. But the community ends up justifying it. Right? It says it's right, in fact, to do this. It's totally righteous to do this. And what I wanted to talk to you today, and I've just to mention what I've said before, this is no defense, right? This is not to say, oh, you should give them a little break because they're well-intentioned. No. It's always well-intentioned, which means it's vacuously true. It's vacuously true. It's a tautology. You get no laurels to say, after being involved in a societal movement that's involved with evil, say, well, we were well-intentioned. Well, of course you are. You are always well-intentioned when you're involved in socio-political movements. It's just the very nature of it. What makes you evil or not concerns suites of principles, which I've talked about before and at Loofwired. It's violations of these kinds of classical liberal principles, which is what might make you evil, not whether you're well-intentioned. That has nothing to do with it. So what I want to talk about today is, what is it that makes well-intentioned people so dangerous? In fact, or another way to say this, I would much rather have a socio-political opposition that was filled to the brim with people that really didn't righteously believe the stuff that they were saying, that they were just in it for the money and for the power. They were just basically being corrupt and using some of those who are in the movement just sort of to line their pockets, and they're kind of riding along, right? That's much better. And the reason that's much better is because what's much more dangerous than that is when you have the community and they all truly believe, then everyone in that community is going to be working hard to reinforce the narrative, right? So we found, let's say, when the science suddenly changed on masks, you suddenly had a world filled with scientists who within 2 months published 100 papers of these observational studies showing that masks worked. How did they do that? Is it because they were paid by some master planners? No. Is it because they were out to line their pockets by getting some of these masking papers in? They would suddenly get more power or more wealth or something? No. It's because they were true believers. And when large numbers of true believers start working together, and then Doug invents this, and then Susie can say, well, yeah, on the basis of that, we can do this. And they start to reinforce one another. You end up with much more powerful justifications for what the community is involved in than you would if instead it was a bunch of corrupt people mostly just hanging on because they didn't just want to hang out there. None of them are going to be working hard to create sophisticated ethical justifications for what they're doing. Right? That's what makes it much more dangerous to have a bunch of well-intentioned people filling the ranks of the group. Right? When that happens, their ethical justifications for their suites of principles and beliefs and actions are much more strongly justified. They're much more wedded into the bones of everybody in the community, and it's only then when communities can feel good about themselves when they crush the skulls of millions of people, something merely corrupt people would never do. They've got other things in the world they want to do. In fact, it would appall them to crush that many skulls. The only people that can crush that many skulls are those that believe they are doing the righteous good because they believe, and they are, in fact, well-intentioned. And that was your science moment. I just want to mention, Vision Revolution is one of my best sellers. It's about 6 or so sort of discoveries of mine on why we see illusions, why we have color vision, why your eyes face forward. It's actually kind of an X-ray vision or seeing through stuff, where writing came from. And it's been published in lots of books. It was published first in 2009. It's in Chinese and Korean and Japanese, a couple printings, and German and Italian, I believe, and Russian. And just this month, it was also now published in Turkish. For the few of you that may want to read it in Turkish, you may. And of course, I never forget to remind you of my most recent book with Dr. Tim Barber, Express the Human, on the foundations of freedom, free expression itself, and why we have emotional expressions at all, deriving it from first principles. Here's why. Animals have to have exactly this suite of signals in order to communicate to one another. That is our fundamental language, is emotional expressions. That was your science moment.